The shoe people started out as a tiny idea in my head a long time ago now, in the early 80s, I suppose it was, might even be before that, when I thought that by looking at somebody's shoes, it gives you a great insight into the character. And I actually believe that most of us, when we go to choose a pair of shoes, we don't walk into the shop and just pick a pair off the shelf. We spend some time having a look, deciding what we want, and they do form very much a part of our personality. And I thought that if a shoe could tell a story, if an old worn-out boot could tell a story, what a wonderful story he might be able to tell about the times when he was new, how he'd spent those times, how he'd fallen on hard times, a bit worn out, a bit battered. Was he happier, sadder because of his demise? And the whole thing sparked off a number of characters in my mind. The Wellington, who'd spend his days in a cupboard under the stairs when it was hot and sunny, listening to the weather forecast, thinking, gosh, I hope it rains so I can get out of this cupboard. And it went from there, really, and there seemed to be an endless number of characters that came to mind. And I don't know whether... I was born in Ireland, in a place called Clonmel in Southern Ireland, and my mother used to work in the shoe factory. So I don't know whether that's something that entered my sort of subconscious in those days, and maybe shoes and boots were always there at some stage. Then I started to talk to people about this idea that I'd got. A lot of people wanted to lock me up, thought I was raving mad. I felt like the Walter Raleigh story that what's he called, Bob? I can't remember his name. The American comedian tells, and he's calling as Sir Walter Raleigh, and he's talking to Queen Elizabeth and saying, we found this, and it's green and it's a leaf, and you roll it up, and you set fire to it, and cigarettes, tobacco. So when I was talking to people about shoe people, I was getting that sort of response. People looking at me as though this man is completely mad. So that's how it all began, and from there, I suppose, I was running a business. I was buying and selling mail order surplus in those days, and particularly after Christmas, I used to get lots of toys from the mail order house. And back then in the 80s, it was Mr. Men, Disney characters, and I thought, I wonder if these characters that I've got kicking around in my imagination could work on toys and games. And that's how the whole process started. So from there, I decided to write some stories. I'd never written stories before. I thought, well, they're my characters. First of all, I came up with lots of names for characters. And Trampy, who's the old worn-out boot and probably the lead character in the series, I based him very much on my grandfather, an Irishman who was very kind, very generous, and nothing fazed him, and he was always cool. And I thought, Trampy's like that. All the others have all the problems, come rushing to him, because he's seen it all a million times before. Nothing fazes him. He's non-materialistic, lives in tumble-down house. His garden's terribly overgrown because he likes nature and wildflowers, birds. And out of that came the rest of the characters. Came an army boot called Sergeant Major, who happened to live next door to Trampy, which gave him a massive problem, because obviously Sergeant Major's house was very, very tidy. The garden was beautifully mowed, the lawn was beautifully mowed with stripes. Of course, living next door to Trampy, with Trampy's weeds stuff growing into his, there was always conflict between the two of them. Then I thought about the clown shoe, Charlie, who'd spent his days in the circus and could do magic tricks and walk tightropes. And slowly but surely the whole thing started to take shape in my head. And I wrote all the notes about it all, and then went out to find someone who I thought might be able to draw it for me, and eventually came across Rob Lee, who at the time was working on a series called Super Ted, a very big series in those days, out of Cardiff. And Rob was sort of the head artist on Super Ted. Met with Rob, talked to him about what I was doing, what I'd got in my mind. He drew a few characters for me, and the rest, I say, is history. We went from there. bearing in mind I knew absolutely nothing about this business at all. I was pretty naive in those days, but I do learn pretty quickly. Some people say to me, well, okay, you've got some characters, you've got some drawings, what are you going to do with it? Well, I'm going to publish some books, make a television series. How do you do that? Well, I don't know yet, but I'm taking a look. I'll find out. So I went knocking lots and lots of doors. And because this industry is like most industries, pretty incestuous, I got lots of people who liked the look of what I was doing, but were sort of saying to me, well, I don't know whether it will work or not. It looks really nice. I think what they're trying to say to me is, don't give up your day job. And but I wasn't getting any negative vibes from anybody. They were all saying it's got a certain charm to it. So at the end of the day, I thought, well, what I'll do, I'll put the whole thing together myself, and I'll create a business around it all. So the first thing I wanted to do was to publish some books. So I went to a printer and said, tell me about books, printing books. Is it expensive? He said, well, basically, the more you have, the cheaper it is. So I don't remember the numbers now, but he gave me the cost of printing 1,000 books, 5,000 books, 20,000 books. And laughing said to me, of course, if you had 500,000 books, it would be very, very cheap. So I said, okay, well, let's print 500,000 books. He said, you being serious? I said, yeah, absolutely, we'll do 500,000 books. So he said, okay, if you're serious about it. So I printed 500,000 books as a first run across 8 titles, and then I think I met somebody in Cardiff, a man called Peter Elias Jones, who in those days was the head of children's television at Harlech Television, and I took my stuff in to show him, and we sat for a long time talking about it, a long time, a couple of hours I suppose, at the end of which Peter said to me, I have to tell you, I really think you've got a worldwide winner on your hands. I was really excited, as you can imagine. So he said, because I have lots of people come through that door and show me what they're doing. And I'm enthusiastic initially because they are. But after a while, I see negatives and think about negatives. But have you thought about the riding boot and the rugby boot? I said, yeah. I said, we can go on creating new characters forever and a day. He said, I really do believe that this could be a huge success. I said, I feel a but coming on. So he said, yeah, there's always a but. He said, but you have to find someone to produce it. You have to find an animation studio. I said, this is expensive. So he said, well, you need to make a pilot. He said, that'll probably cost you 15 or 20. But it's worth doing. I said, 15 or 20 what? So he said, 15 or 20,000 pounds. I said, Peter, I'm so sorry I've taken up a lot of your time, but I'll go back and do what I know best. I'll continue to sell mail order surplus. He said, well, you can't afford it. I said, it's not that I can't afford it, it's I don't understand it. He said, well, I really urge you to think about this long and hard. You should do this. So I thought, well, here's a man who's obviously in the industry, knows what he's talking about. And at the time he was on the Children's Network Committee and said he would assist me to get the programme in front of the Network Committee. So I decided to do it. So he recommended a few studios that were working out of Cardiff Animation Studios. So I walked around knocking doors basically. And I came upon a small studio, and it was called. They were doing a series for Welsh TV called Hannah Dushin in the Welsh language. It means half a dozen. It was about 6 young people, some cartoon characters. The company was called Fairwater Films. So I walked in, and there were 4 or 5 people in there. Introduced myself, tell them who I was, tell them what I wanted to do. Because you can imagine being in this business for a long time. There are loads of people knocking doors saying, I want to have the next TV series, cartoon series, it's going to be a massive success. So they looked at me a bit cynically at first. So I said, look, I need someone to do a pilot for me. I know nothing about this business. But if you help me to do it, I will do it. I will get a series out of this at some stage, providing you don't rip me off, and I'll know whether you have or not. if you don't, I'll give you the series when we come to do a series. So they said, okay, we'll do it. We're just about to be out of work here, so we'll do it for cost. And let's see how we go with it. So they did a great job on the pilot. And then on another occasion, I have a house in St Ives in Cornwall, which I've had for a long, long time. And I was in St Ives and I was invited to a barbecue one evening by my next door neighbour's son. And I went to this barbecue, and at the barbecue was Justin Hayward of the Moody Blues, the man who wrote that classic Nights in White Satin. And Justin has a house in St Ives as well, just outside of St Ives. So we chatted. I used to disc jockey in the 60s, so I knew quite a lot of the bands in the 60s. I used to work for a London agent in the 60s. And we were chatting about things, and he said, what are you up to these days? So I said, I'm actually working on a new idea for a cartoon series. So he said, have you got any artwork? I said, I've got some at home. He said, well, I'll come by and have a look at it. So the following day, he came down to see me and looked at this stuff and said, who's writing the music for this? I said, nobody at the moment. He said, well, I'll write it. So I said, Justin, it's really nice of you to offer, but I couldn't afford to pay you. So he said, well, I haven't asked you to pay me. He said, let me have a look at it. Let's take a look at it and see what happens. So we had a chat about, did I have anything in mind as far as lyrics were concerned, and we talked about that. Then I came home the following day, back to the Midlands the following day, and it was one Sunday evening. He called me and he said, I've just written this opening title song. Have a listen to it. So he was sitting at the other end of the phone, obviously playing his guitar, singing what has become probably one of the most well songs around the world these days, Shoo 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 People. So then he wanted to write the music, and he decided to write all of the music. So slowly, although I wasn't aware of it, I was putting a rather nice team of people together, people with reputation. And then we were now producing a pilot, just in writing the music. And I got a call from Central Television, now Carlton Television, from a director of a program called Venture, which was a business program, and said that he'd heard quite a lot about this man who was walking around with this new idea. Could he come and see me? So he came over to see me, and we talked about what I was doing. And I'd printed 500,000 books, and we were going to be doing a television series. So he said, and by then I'd started to knock large company doors with a view to licensing the characters onto their various toys and games and pyjamas. And I'd already signed a contract with Boots. It was the first time they'd taken the character to put on nightwear, pyjamas. I'd signed a contract with Pirelli, who were going to do slippers based on the characters. I'd almost signed a contract with Hallmark cards, greetings cards, world's largest greeting card supplier. So I was talking to the director about all this, and he said, I really want to tell this story. This is just such an unbelievable story. I want to bring the producer over tomorrow. Let's talk about it. So they came back the next day and said, we'd like to do a documentary, a half-hour show, purely about what you're doing. So I said, well, let me have a think about that, and let me talk to my wife. We're a very close family, and let me see what she thinks. And she said, well, you're spending so much time and so much investment on this. Do you think it's the right thing to do, TV show at this stage and documentary? I said, well, if you don't think, she said, well, you've spent so much money, it just might get it wrong. So I called, it was a man called Richard Key. I called Richard. I said, I'm not going to do this. Thanks for making me the offer. He said, you must let me tell the story. I have to tell the story. I want to take you and your wife out for dinner this evening. So we went out for dinner, and he pleaded with me to let him to do it. So I said, okay, let's do it. So my wife said, you can do it, providing, I'm not involved, the children aren't involved, we don't want filming at the house. And I said, okay. So Richard said we'd live with one another for about 7 weeks, and he would come with me to all of the meetings, which is what we did. And I think we had 7 of the most fantastic weeks. He and I, we laughed and laughed for 7 weeks together. And he did this documentary called Feet First, which went out in October of 1986, I think it is now. And after it went out, our phone was on meltdown, with just people ringing, wanting to be involved in it. And the whole thing kicked on from there. Shortly after that, I needed an agent because I didn't understand licensing worldwide. So I approached Disney and Warner Brothers. Disney said they didn't do anything that was out of house. All their developments were in-house. I phoned Warner's, tried to get hold of a man called Keith Isaac, who was running the European operation. Got to his PA, a lady called Sheila Sutherland. Said, "My name's James Driscoll." She said, "The shoe people." I said, "Oh, you've heard of us?" She said, "Heard of you?" She said, "The entire industry is talking about you." She said, "I just don't believe you're calling me. I have a note on my desk that says, 'Find James Driscoll, Keith Isaac.' And here you are calling me." So she put me through to Keith. And he said, "Gosh, you're creating a big stir around the place." I said, "Yes, I'm actually looking for representation." So he said, "Well, we don't do anything that's out of house, but come and see me. I'd love to see what you're doing." He said, "When can you come?" I said, "I'll come tomorrow." So I went down to Wardour Street in London to see him and met with Keith. And sometimes you'll meet somebody and gosh, I've known this man all of my life. On other occasions you think you know someone for 10 years, but you don't know them at all. So we sat and we talked, and I showed him the trailer and the music. And after he'd finished looking at it, he said to me, "I have to tell you, this is the best thing I've seen since The Mr. Men," which at the time was the biggest thing around. He said, "We've never taken an out-of-house property, but I want to do this." I said, "You, Warner Brothers?" He said, "Yeah." So I signed a contract within about 48 hours with Keith for him to represent us, or Warner Brothers to represent us. And he actually came and was interviewed on the documentary, saying what he felt about the show. And the first thing they did, they put out a big marketing program, and they had a skyscraper with all their characters sitting in the various windows of the skyscraper. So there was Looney Tunes, Batman and Robin, Catwoman, and there, next to Superman's window was Trampy sitting in another window. Just totally unbelievable, here we were, we'd arrived. And then the show went on air in April of 1987, TVAM, Saturday mornings. And in November of 1987, we were 7 months old. We got nominated for an award in America, the International Film and TV Festival of New York. It was in the Best Animation category. So I got a call, I think it was from the British Film Council, saying you've been nominated in this category. It's November the 13th. It's the award ceremony. It was episode 13 as well that got the nomination. So I was excited, and I'd never been to America. I think at that stage, I don't think I'd even flown. I'd been on an airplane. And said, that's great news, but we'll see how we go. So I said, "Well, aren't you going?" I said, "Well, I've got time, really." I said, "And probably can't afford to go." And a friend of mine in those days was a man called Bill Podmore, who was the executive producer of Coronation Street. He was known as the Godfather on Coronation Street. And I'd been introduced to Bill by a man called Johnny Briggs, who plays Mike Baldwin, who lives in Stourbridge, in this town. And I remember Bill calling me and saying, "Congratulations, you've got this nomination. We'll have a great time in New York." I said, "We will?" He said, "Yeah, well, we were nominated for World in Action." I said, "Well, I'm not going." I said, "I can't afford to go, Bill." He said, "You have to go." He said, "You've been in this industry for 5 minutes. You've got a nomination. You've got to go. I'll pay for you." So I decided I'd go. So, of course, Warner's made great play of it, as you can imagine. They took the back page of the programme and said, "Warner Brothers are proud to represent James Driscoll and his magnificent shoe people." So I went to this glitzy, glamorous award ceremony, and lo and behold, to my disbelief, we actually won the Gold Award. Couldn't believe it. Because I was watching the categories come up, and the 4 nominations came up, and we were sort of last. And then I was sitting there talking, feeling that we're not going to win this, the rest are American. And I looked up again, and there was Sergeant Major just sitting on the screen as a still. And somebody shouted, you've won it, you've got it." Because Warner's were... So we won a Gold Award. And then in March of the following year, of 1988. So we were 13 months old at that stage. We got a BAFTA nomination. We didn't win, but to be nominated, it was fantastic. And the thing tracked on from there, really. It was just like a steam train, or like a train. Nothing could stop it once it got going. And then we slowly went to Cannes to sell the series across the world. And first time there, sold to 12 territories. Eventually ended up selling it to 62 countries across the world. So I spent a long time, probably 7 or 8 years, just going around the world, opening the series in various territories. We were the first series to be networked in the former Soviet Union. First series from the West. I was introduced there. I was asked to go and to take a look at a publishing program out there. They wanted to publish the books, so I went out to Moscow to the State Publishing House, and they wanted to publish the books but didn't have any paper. So they asked if we'd provide the paper, which I thought about. And on that visit, I was taken to Soviet television. And the man who was running it, Soviet television, and his entourage, I met with him, and he said that, spoke good English, that they wanted to broadcast the series because it was, the series itself is totally non-controversial. It's just pure storytelling. That I'd like stories that to tell my grandchild, my grandson, and I'd like parents to tell their children. So it was warm, it's friendly. There's no big message that we're trying to get out there. It's just allowing children to enjoy being children for 5 minutes. These days we seem to want them to grow up all too quickly. And the head of Soviet television said, "Yeah, I'd like to do this. I haven't got any money, but maybe we can pay you in 3 years or 5 years." I said, "Well, actually, I'll give it to you as a gift to the children of the Soviet Union." He burst into tears and hugged me, and about 3 weeks later I was asked to go back and to take the spools of film to hand them over, and I handed them over to the Minister of Culture on television one Saturday morning. And then I was taken to the Kremlin, presented to President Gorbachev and Prime Minister Rishkov, who actually signed some document releasing paper for the first 8 million Shoe People books, which sold out within half a day, I think, of going into the various stores there, and ended up selling just over 25 or 26 million books in the Soviet Union. Had a great time in Russia. Opened an office in Moscow eventually. Big merchandising program out there. So then just after that, China was next, Hong Kong. America, obviously, we sold to Nickelodeon in America. Again, I think it was one of the first, if not the first, cartoon series from the West to be broadcast or on cable out there. So it's been a hell of a trip. It's been really, really good time. It's been lots of lovely things have happened. We've been involved in lots of charitable campaigns. We were instrumental in raising a great deal of money for the Great Ormond Hospital appeal. Characters fronted that appeal. We did the Shoe People Badge-a-thon and supplied I think last check I paid them was sort of £50,000, but we did over 1 million badges, I suppose, that went to that appeal. We did a national road safety campaign with the Ministry of Transport. We did a healthy eating campaign nationally for the British Dietetic Association. We did a British Dental Association, a campaign through all dentist surgeries. And people were saying to me all the time, "Well, how much do you charge us for these campaigns?" I said, "Well, why would I want to charge? We're happy. These characters want to go out and do good things. It's been very good to me, and we want to put something back." And that happened not just here, but all over the world. Did orphanages in Russia. So it was a very exciting time. It's been a great success, great show. And it's people say to me, "You must have been popping champagne corks all of the time," but I wasn't, because there was always something else to do. It was just very, very exciting. And the number of times I've been interviewed, people have said, "Well, you must be really wealthy because of this," and I've done okay. Financially, I've done okay. done well. But the true wealth is being able to go to 62 countries in the world and walk in and see happy smiling faces, children and parents, because of something that was once in my head. And that's the real wealth. It's just to have all those people saying this is really, really nice. And even now today, shoe people, I suppose I stopped doing shoe people in 1996. I can show you letters that probably came in yesterday from people asking me, where can we get the books? These are people now, I suppose, who were children when 16, 17 years ago, and are now parents who want it for their children. And that happens all the time. And in this town, Stourbridge, which is known as Shoe Town, I suppose, if I walk along the streets sometimes, I have children who are now at college and beyond singing the tune as I walk by, singing Shoe People. I don't think I've ever come to terms completely with the success of it. It's because sometimes if I'm out, people say, what do you do? I say, well, I did something called the Shoe People. You might not have heard of it. I say, don't be ridiculous, of course you've heard of it. And I still feel that it was quite small in many ways. I never got to grips with the fact that it was massive in 62 territories. So it's been a really interesting time. It's been fantastic, in fact. A question I've been asked many times is, what sort of shoes and boots do I like? What shoes do I wear? And really, the focus, as far as shoes are concerned, was never there. These are real characters in my imagination, and of course, in children, when they look at them, they don't see them as shoes or boots. They see them as Trampy or Margot and Sergeant Major, and some time ago, when things were really going well and it was at its height, I remember saying to my wife that if I actually saw Charlie coming down the stairs this morning, Charlie's the clown shoe, I'd just say, hi Charlie, how you doing? And walk straight past him. They became that real to me. I know I probably needed for someone to take a look and maybe for someone in a white coat to come and take me away. But that's how it was all of the time. And they're still very real. Even now when I think about them, I don't actually think about them as shoes or boots, but real individuals with personality who live in this magical world called Shoe Town. And many people I've spoken to over the years, they've become real to them too. And I've met some extraordinary people. I met Princess Diana on several occasions. She was the patron of the Great Ormond Street Hospital Appeal. And in early days, I think it was Harry wasn't well. And I remember writing to her and sending her a Shoe People book. And she wrote back to me thanking me for the book, telling me that Harry was recovering. And when I subsequently met her and was introduced to her, she actually remembered that. She was the most extraordinary person. And on another occasion, we were chatting, and she said, "Just remind me again, where are you from?" I said, "I come from a place called Stourbridge in the West Midlands." She said, "Oh, I know Stourbridge." She said, I actually visit Hagley Hall quite often, which is about a mile and a half from Stourbridge, the seat of Viscount Cobham. She said, I love Stourbridge and I love that area. I love Hagley. It's one of my favourite places. I said, "I bet you say that to everybody who tells you where they come from." She said, "I don't tell fibs." So she was really nice, and so we had a few times, lots of pleasant times talking to her. I met President Gorbachev. I was involved in a council in America called the Young Astronaut Council, which was a charity set up by President Reagan in 1987, I think it was. And he believed in those days that children in America were falling behind their peers in the rest of the world in the area of maths, science and technology, and set up a council, an educational council, and brought in the best educators and linked the council to the space program, because his belief was that boys and girls were interested in space, and called it Young Astronauts. And when we were publishing a magazine out there, and they approached us with a view to publishing a magazine for the council and for the Young Astronaut Club. So I was invited to Washington to meet the people who were doing that, and after a while became involved with the Young Astronaut people in the Young Astronaut Club, and George Bush became chairman emeritus, and every president since Reagan has actually become chairman emeritus of the Young Astronauts. So on one occasion I was invited with a party of people from the Young Astronaut Council and had tea with George Bush, which was quite exciting. I've probably met most of the royal family. I think the only person I didn't meet was the Queen Mother, unfortunately, but I've met everybody else. So this has been the most incredible journey for me. When you think I come from a very simple background. I was born in Southern Ireland, brought up in a small council estate there. Came over here when I was 8. My parents had come over 8 years previously to find work over here, so my grandparents brought me up. Then my grandmother became ill. My parents came to get me and brought me here. And initially we lived in one room of a very large house. So we slept in one bed. My mother and father at the top of the bed, my brother and I at the bottom of the bed, in this one room. Sort of tenement house, I suppose. No bathroom, just shared a kitchen and a toilet. Then we moved to a council flat, not far from here, Walsall. So I was brought up on a council estate. And I would never imagine in those days that I'd be sitting here talking to you about this enormous success that we've had, or that I've had. If someone said to me, even 17 years ago, one day you'll be a writer and you'll have had a series that's been seen all over the world and it'll bring lots of success, I just wouldn't have believed it. And in 1994, I was honoured by the Queen and awarded an MBE, which again was quite extraordinary. I remember receiving the letter. I was in bed actually, and one Saturday morning my wife came into the letter. I said, yeah, and it was from 10 Downing Street. And I said it must be the Conservative Party looking for some funds. So I opened it, and it was from the Prime Minister, John Major, saying that he had it in mind to recommend me for an MBE. And lo and behold, it happened. It was, again, extraordinary. So my wife and my son and my daughter, we went to the palace, had a lovely day. Really exciting. Couldn't have imagined it ever. And things have gone on from there. The shoe people, in 1996, I decided that I was going to sell, so did that. But I'm still tagged almost every day of my life with the success of that wonderful series, and it's been really good. In 96, I decided I'd take some time out. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do, so I thought I'd go do some writing, stuff that I hadn't done for a while. So I took about 3 years just to do things that I wanted to do. And during that time, I created a series that's in production now called Astronauts, which is a 3D space-related series. I actually developed that alongside the Young Astronaut Council way back. I had an idea that we should link the two things together, and so that came out of that. I have another series called Oggies, which is currently in production. I recently acquired a 50% stake of an animation studio in Hollywood. So we're producing that out of Hollywood. So there's quite a lot going on still. I'm now back, I think I'm back with a vengeance to do some more nice stuff. But these days I can do it more at my pace and in my time and enjoy doing what I'm doing, whereas before, say for 8 years I spent my days on aeroplanes. We had an office in New York, in Moscow, Hong Kong, Tokyo, studio in Los Angeles, London. So at the height of it, it was very much coming home, dropping a bag, getting some clean shirts, a week later back on an aeroplane, which was fantastic. For the first maybe 4 years, it was truly unbelievable, because I was visiting places I'd never seen before. I was seeing really nice, exciting people. But then 4 years later, 8 years down the line, it becomes another city, another office, another job, another day. But I haven't got any regrets. I'd go back and repeat it all again tomorrow if I was asked to. People often ask me, what's your biggest achievement? My biggest achievement, this will sound really extraordinary to a lot of people, is marrying my wife, who we've been together for 36 years, married for 36 years. And she's been probably the inspiration behind everything I've done. Because we've had really difficult times. When we first got married, we hadn't got any money, we were broke. We had a baby quite soon on, our son Adam. But we had the greatest time, even when we were broke. And when the chips have been down, which there have been on a few occasions, as we've, over 36 years, she's the one who's always said, don't worry, darling, as long as we're happy and we're healthy and we've got one another, that's what matters. So I think that is, without question, the biggest achievement in my life, in actually marrying that girl. And obviously since then we've got a lovely son and a daughter. And just recently, in the last 10 weeks, we have a new grandson, George, who's the delight of our lives at the moment. And someone I'm going to be reading many, many stories to, not just you people, but hopefully some new stuff that I'm going to be doing in the not too distant future.